Welcome everyone to another episode of the Ol'Timers comic book show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. Joining me this week, we have a full crew. That's right. The 13th Crusader is back from whence he went. And of course, as always, we have the Professor. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Doing all right, Johnny. How are you?
All good, man. All good.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh my God. Are the lights on? Are you dangerous?
Yeah.
Are you here now trying to entertain us?
No.
No. Okay. Thought you were quoting Nirvana there with your hello, 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 but never mind. Right, so this topic this week is teen supergroups. Now I said I should do Hanson, but nobody got the joke. Or maybe the Osmonds.
Oh. See, the Osmonds are more my speed.
Right, there you go. Sorry.
What?
Oh my God! So, Professor, this was your choice of topic. What was it?
Yeah.
Why did you go with this one?
Because we were dying for a topic to talk about. No, seriously. I think there's a lot of room here to talk about teen supergroups. There are a lot of them, and I think what was the first teen supergroup? Was it the Young Allies, or
was it Teen Titans?
No, I think Young Allies precursor to Teen Titans by a decade at least.
All right, okay.
Maybe two.
Maybe two. All right,
yeah.
Okay. So let's have a rundown of the also rans. Who didn't make the grade and why? 13th, we'll start with you on this one because you picked a group that I was like, what? A head scratcher when I thought you'd go somewhere else.
Yeah, the Legion of Superheroes didn't make it because technically they're not born yet. That's my bad joke for today.
Your only bad joke?
Maybe. No promises.
I thought you'd have at least 13 of them.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I thought of like Boy Commando. Was it Boy Commandos? But they were Newsboy Legion, maybe.
Yeah, Newsboy. Yeah. That's cool as well.
Not a supergroup.
Correct.
Yeah, not like ABBA. Okay, so.
True.
So why not Legion? Because I was really surprised when you didn't go down that route.
I don't know.
Good chat.
Honestly, like again, their ages have varied over their many iterations. So you may have some that are young adults, you could say, and not necessarily teenagers, right? Like especially later in time when like Sun Boy, Saturn Girl, Lightning Lad, they take in more members and they're aliens. So some of them don't age properly, or I shouldn't say that, like we do.
Yeah.
So, and then there's too many of them.
Yeah, there is a show.
Yes.
There is that as well. There is that. I think that could take 13 episodes just talking about those bad boys.
Exactly.
Okay.
For sure.
Cool. For sure. Bud, who's on your also ran list?
There's a couple of groups. I mean, the Teen Titans, I think, was the obvious choice that none of us picked. Yep. And a lot of that was because when I think of like when I was a teenager, who did I like to read? And I kind of missed the boat on the Teen Titans because Teen Titans was, Wolfman and Perez was around like 1983, 84. And I was like 12 and I hadn't started reading comic books yet. But my pick was from right around like maybe I was like 3 years into reading comics. And that one really spiked me. The other one that didn't make the cut because they're not teenage superheroes was Power Pack.
See, I was going to go Power Pack when that was what my first thought. I was like, "Ooh, Power Pack! I love talking about Power Pack. I love that book."
Power Pack was a fun book.
But then again, you're absolutely right. They're not teenagers.
Yep. Could have gone Runaways, but they didn't make the time frame. Could have gone Young Avengers, and that didn't make the time frame.
I thought of Hellions, if anybody remembers them.
Oh,
yeah, the bad guy mutants.
Yes.
Yeah,
What about Fallen Angels? Remember that limited series that Sunspot?
Has there ever been a series of books that have been so bad as Fallen Angels? And that's the old version and the newer version. Yeah.
Ironically, I just sold my set of Fallen Angels yesterday.
What'd you get? $2.50 for him?
I got a beer for it.
A beer. How many issues was it? Was it 6?
It was 8.
Eight issues?
It was 8 because it was a weird. Yeah, I remember it being a weird number for a limited series. Was 8? I'm like, what? It wasn't 12. It wasn't 6. It wasn't 4. I think it's the only 8-issue limited series that I can even think of.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. It was supposed to be 12, but they had 8, so 4 falls off.
So
Fallen Angels, get it?
We're down to 2, guys. Okay. So who remind you who was in Fallen Angels? Sunspot was I suppose the
Sunspot and Warlock were the 2 New Mutants in it. They introduced was that the one that they introduced was it Wheelie? What was it? Hot WizKid, the one in the wheelchair?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
And yeah, that's about it. I can't remember anymore.
Cool.
Was Boom Boom in there? Boom Boom? Was she?
I don't remember, to be honest.
And there you go. That's how forgettable this series.
You're gonna make me Google it.
Yeah. So I mean, to be fair, when you talk about kids supergroups, there's not that many. Not within the time frame of us. Yeah, you've got Young Avengers, you've got Young Justice on the other side. You've got Teen Titans, you've got the Pack we talked about. Legion of Superheroes is probably DC's mainstay in the 70s, especially when Superboy was a member of that group. But no, I mean, could you argue that Cloak and Dagger?
I would say so. When they first came out, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, excellent. All right, so enough with the also-rans. Let's have a rundown of who we got. Now, because he was missing last time, our lead-off hitter this time around is going to be 13th Crusader. And we're going to look at this beauty. And this is New Mutants #1, not to be confused with the graphic novel, which we've already looked at once.
That's correct.
So this is from February '83. You can get this in the UK for around £20. Stateswide, it's 9.6. You can pay a princely $100 for it. Written by Chris Claremont, with art by Bob McLeod, inks by Mike Gustovich, colors by Glynis Wen, and letters by Tom Orzechowski. How did I do there? I did all right there, didn't I? Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
excellent.
Excellent
Yeah,
job.
got the names right. Woohoo! All right, 13th. This is your bad boy. So would you like to take it away?
Sure. So, as Johnny mentioned, we did cover in a previous episode the Marvel graphic novel #4, which was the first appearance of the New Mutants. And there you get introduced to a brand new group of mutants, right? Because prior to that, the word mutant was pretty much relegated to the X-Men title. So now that was kind of a branching off. So now that group gets their own title in the New Mutants. And I guess I kind of alluded to this the last time we spoke about it, but if I didn't, I'll say it now. I totally think that this was Marvel's answer to the Teen Titans, because at the time the X-Men was one of their best selling titles. And then on the other side, on DC, you had the Teen Titans with Wolfman and Perez. So here's an answer to Teen Titans, if you will, via the vehicle of the X-Men lore. So long story short, the X-Men are off in space, right, during the time that this story takes place. And Professor X kind of recruits these new mutants, if you will. They're young, but he's very reluctant into sending them out into the field like he did with the X-Men. So there's 2 things going on. This is Professor X, one, being manipulated by the Brood, for those X-Men fanatics that are love to dig into their history, but at this time. But secondly, his reluctance to lose a group of X-Men again. Remember, he went through this before with his original group when they went to Krakoa, resulted in a new band of X-Men. They also get pretty much creamed by the Phoenix Saga and all these other things that happened. Like, they really, really went through a lot. But Professor X doesn't give up on his, I guess, fundamental reason for wanting to help other mutants, because he knows that it's a challenge. He knows that it's difficult for them, especially when they're in their teenage years. They may not know that they're even a mutant yet, or they don't know what the hell's going on. So that part is respectable for Professor X. That doesn't change. Within issue 1 with Chris Claremont, again, it's like a spin-off. But I think in later years, you couldn't treat it as a spin-off anymore. This literally branched off into its own franchise pretty much. And I kind of like/blame this at the same time for opening the doors to opening the door to like creating mutants. They were like a dime a dozen at one point.
Yeah, that's a shame.
You know,
and events, because I mean,
Correct.
New Mutants and X-Men, after a while, got so connected.
Right.
It was really hard to sort of like get away from both of them. If you read X-Men, you had to read New Mutants and vice versa.
So what I liked about it, it was like, well, if you really like the X-Men, now I get another title. It's just with different characters, but they're still in. They all live in the same place, literally in the story. They're residing in the X Mansion. They're using the Danger Room and whatnot. So that part of it was good. It would kind of be evil, I guess, to think of, were you rooting for the Mutant Massacre or not, because that's how it got to a point where there were just so many.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say which one I was shouting for.
Yeah, but you know, here you get this is outside Marvel graphic novel. Now you get issue 1. Chris Claremont tends to be very wordy. Here, it's just a day in the life of these kids getting started, and they're introducing you again. If you didn't get a chance to read their first appearance, maybe you saw Karma in Marvel Team Up 100. You know, maybe you caught them in Marvel graphic novel. Either way, this was a great introduction to the band of New Mutants, and a very quick answer from Professor X. I'm going to train you guys, but you're not going out on missions, period. So if you were a fan, you're like, okay, you're thinking that that's what's going to happen. It's not going to happen just yet. Circumstances will force them to come out of that shell, if you will. But again, the art's pretty solid. I think it's a good number 1. I don't think it's a great number 1 or a legendary issue, if you will. It's just really a who's who. I hate to say that for Marvel, but it's true. It's a who's who, and you do get introduced to Project Wide Awake, and one of the people I hate in the X-Men lore, like really like a lot, is Peter Gyrich. I can't stand that freaking character. And in one of these pages, you see him, and you're like, "Oh God, him." You know. So for X-Men,
that's exactly how I felt when I looked at this book this morning. I was like, "No." Well, let me get to the page, and we'll see him.
For a regular human being or whatever at this time, he was a thorn in with all of the mutants for you know, via the government.
And you already hated him from Avengers.
Correct.
Now you hated him in the X-Men.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So for a government official, he literally went through the pages of several core titles in Marvel, and now here he is in the first issue of New Mutants. So, you know, again, I think the pluses in this book, the art's solid. It's Chris Claremont, you know, and for those that love the Danger Room, I love any stories that involve the Danger Room, whether they're real projections or actual ones. But it's good to see them go through their training. Sometimes their Danger Room adventures were more exciting than some of their on-field adventures. So that's just my opinion.
Isn't the Danger Room in X-Men, though? Isn't that just like using the holodeck in Star Trek?
Yep.
It's like a MacGuffin of all MacGuffins.
Yeah, well, like Star Trek, they had entire episodes based on the holodeck.
Yeah, and those episodes suck.
Yeah.
apart from Elementary Mr. Data.
I like it. I don't love it. But like I said, sometimes I think that in the comics, maybe some of these exploits in the Danger Room, there's some pretty good takeaway scenes, especially in the X-Men pages. You know, when they get to learn their limits and they're at odds with each other all of a sudden through training. Classic X-Men Cyclops face-offs. So here you got this new group kind of showcasing what their abilities are for the audience who may be getting their first taste of this spin-off group of mutants. So good to have, you know, you could get it fairly cheap.
Yeah, there are some really good, interesting characters in here. I love Danny Moonstar. I don't know why. She hasn't done much, but for me, it's like I just like we talk about diversity in modern day comic books, and books like New Mutants and X-Men to an extent had natural diversity. I mean, they went out and said, right, we want to create an international team of mutants, but then it made sense. It wasn't overthought. Today's books are
they
just
really advertise like anybody human could be a mutant. It's just another gene, so that could mean anybody on the planet. And with that opened up the door to a worldwide community within the books, right, within the pages, and that's exactly what they did, especially with New Mutants.
And especially you think, you know, you might think Danny Moonstar's like the first one, but she isn't, because she had is it Thunderstar? Is that what you call him? Thunderbird. Thank you. Yeah. Thunderbird back in the day. So, Professor, New Mutant fan?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna tell you why.
Okay, good.
So New Mutants to me always read like the Legion of Substitute Heroes to me. There was always just a bunch of characters all in the same uniform. They didn't have any individuality, maybe except for Danny, who insisted on wearing her Indian moccasins, right, in a little, you know, lapis lazuli belt or whatever. The rest of the characters, I mean, let's face it, New Mutants was never put on the map until Cable came on at the end of the friggin' series.
So, do you think? Because I always think Warlock was the big pull.
Where is he now?
I would say that for me, it would be when Ilyana Rasputin came in.
So there's a shout as well, yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna say, let me see off the top of my head, around issue 16-ish, I think things started taking off with her. And that, to me, kind of put it on the map, and then it went on to the next thing within the New Mutants.
Well, here I think that so I do think New Mutants was created as a kind of like a hit back about Teen Titans, but you know, Chris Claremont, who insisted on having that vice grip on the mutant universe, insisted on writing this book. Which I think maybe was a little detrimental to this book. I think
I absolutely agree with you on that.
And the thing that I mean, there's a lot for me to not really like about New Mutants. I didn't read New Mutants when I was a kid. I have gone back and read most of it. Like, I think a lot of these characters are just super forgettable. They're not. They really, as much as Claremont tries to give them personality, I just don't think that they were ever really fleshed out, except for maybe Sam and Danny, right? Cannonball and
I think Ran didn't Ran have a Reign? Didn't she have a graphic novel, something like The Reign of Terror or something, where she was back in the moorlands of Scotland, and there was a werewolf hunting people down? Yeah,
I don't know. I don't, you know,
sure, that's what it was
maybe
called.
I'll come across something that'll make me really maybe kind of look back on this with, you know, what I think. There's more that I have that I can't really remember, but there's a lot that I went through that I was just like, you know, talk to me when they hit New Mutants 97 or something, when Cable first appears, and then 3 issues later it becomes X-Force. And then, you know, all these characters become more dynamic with their own costumes, and, you know, Cannonball ends up on the X-Men. The other thing, so this is one of the things that I was going to say, it did feel rushed, right? We'll talk about rushed when I get to my pick, but with New Mutants and X-Men, if you were reading them concurrently, so first of all, you get Kitty, who appears in both of these books, and so does Ilyana. Is appearing in both, so you do kind of get that feeling that they're, you know, living in the same spot, like you said. But New Mutants was like a little behind, or a little behind what was going on in X-Men, because here, when the New Mutants first appear, they say the X-Men are off in space. Professor X doesn't want to lose another team, but they're already back. If you're reading them in the timeline. This issue of New Mutants, by the time this comes out, X-Men are already back and doing what they do. Also, if you keep reading, by the time you get to issue 7, 8, or 9, they're referring to things in X-Men that have yet to happen in New Mutants. And there's a couple of things like character appearances, like Ilyana joining the New Mutants that happened in X-Men, or you knew she was going to be in the New Mutants before she actually ever appeared. Plus, at this point in time, she had her own limited series going on when she got her powers in hell and limbo. So there was a lot that was going on that was, I think, the victim of scheduling too. So
yeah, it's a great point to make. I did say that they're quite cross-connected. The problem being that schedule made it was hard to see that cross-connect.
Yeah, so, and Claremont was writing everything, so you'd think that there would be some kind of continuity with the issues actually coming out and hitting the newsstand, right? So,
it's one of the things, like I said before, it's one of the things that I like, that they were willing to expand, right? From a business perspective, if you're Marvel, like Teen Titans was taken off. X-Men was your number one seller at one point. Now why not spin off? Why not throw this and see what happens? And they made it last. They made it work eventually, although it took years. Right? So that's one thing. That's one way to look at it. But this also opened up the door for confusion for readers, where if you thought it was bad like then, now it's just like we've said this a lot. You need a PhD now to follow X-Men.
Agreed.
This started it off, in my opinion, with needing a PhD to keep it all together.
Cool. All right. So my quick thoughts on this book. I agree. There's only a handful of characters that I'm actually interested in. But reading this, so Wolfsbane's one of them, and Danny Moonstar. That's it. I don't even like Sam that much. So for me, this is just run of the mill, by the numbers, X-Baby stuff. The Danger Room problem, like, oh my god, I've not seen that before. The writing is pure Claremont. I mean, I think at this stage, Claremont maybe had 3 scripts, and you just rotate them around the books. Because, I mean, you've got this page here. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can zoom in. It always goes wrong when I do this, so apologies. Apologies for when I get this wrong, but, oh, look at that. It is working a little bit. So, there we go. He kissed me. Does that mean he likes me? I'm sure I read that when Kitty Pryde used to see Peter walk by. Oh, Peter looked at me. Does he like me? It's like, oh, come on, give it a rest. You know, it's like, move on. So I didn't realize the Brood were involved in this book at all. Although I did notice that Professor Xavier seems to be managing his wheelchair, so I was going to ask why that's going on. So
yeah, Professor X's personality was much more aggressive in here, and that's where your connection comes from.
Ah, there we go. Cool. So for me, it's an interesting look back at what we had at the time. I mean, Marvel, you're absolutely right. 13th, this is Marvel's kind of like starting of expansion. At that time was Spectacular Spider-Man House, I think it was.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so you've got 2 Spidey books kicking around. So it makes sense to go 2 X books because X-Men was the big seller.
Yeah, why not? I mean, they were selling tons and tons of copies.
So
why not?
It was around the corner. You also had West Coast Avengers and Avengers. So you know, the idea was let's dilute to maximize. I think the trick is to make the second books dramatically different, and Spectacular Spider-Man ended up doing that by being a lot darker with the inclusion of characters like Black Cat and Cloak and Dagger. West Coast Avengers was a little bit more lighthearted because it had Hawkeye in it and he was cracking the funnies. There's not that much to differentiate New Mutants from X-Men other than the fact that the younger characters, and because it's written by the same bloke, it doesn't. He has one tone, and normally that tone's pretty good, and we all like that tone, but there is no change in tone. So.
If there was a different writer, I think it would have probably, you know, and who knows, maybe it would have never taken off with another writer, but maybe you know, I don't know. But now looking back through the lens of time, I'm just like, you know, wow, Claremont was, I don't know if he was spreading himself thin, because at that point he was writing absolutely everything that had to do with the New Mutants. And at that point they were coming out with different limited series too for Kitty and Wolverine, Magic, Iceman, you know, and I don't know if he wrote Iceman, but he wrote everything else.
I've got to be honest, I've never understood the fascination with Magic. I've never understood the fascination. I've never understood why Marvel is so key on like pushing her. all the way through the 80s. I've never understood that, but hey ho. Each to their own. Right, time for a break. We've talked about Marvel book. We've got another Marvel book coming up after the break, so makes sense. We look at this one. Check it out. Podcast where you get to see this guy. I'll get right eventually. That guy. There you go. That guy. Talk about Marvel books and, of course, the DC, the MCU, and the Disney Plus channels. There
yes,
it's all on there.
It's all fun all the time.
Yeah, Moon Knight got a bit of a kicking. Just saying. All right. Okay, next up then is the Professor's choice. And the Professor has gone for this bad boy. Check it out. This is New Warriors #1. Can anyone say made up book in a hurry? It's from July 90. eBay, you can get this for the princely sum of 4 whole English pounds. On
Wow.
Go Collect, I know, crazy. On Go Collect, it's £110. So if anyone wants this book, drop me a $5. I'll get it sorted for you. It's written by Fabian Nicieza, art by Mark Bagley, inks by Al Williamson, letters by Michael Hessler, and colors by Michael Rockwitz. Are you impressed I got Nicieza right?
Yes.
It's because I interviewed him for Outside the Panels a few months back.
Did you? You asked him how do you pronounce
I did.
it?
I asked, how did you say your name again? So I was like, yeah. So there you go. That's how I did it. Woo.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Talk to me about this then.
Heroes for the 90s. Can I tell you? This is the first book that I know of that was actually workshopped. They actually shopped this out to different retailers and other things, like which we're coming out with a new teen book. Which characters do you want in it? And they actually were like test marketing it before it actually got put together and released. We knew the book was coming, but we didn't know who was going to be in it. And
who picked Speedball? I hope their shop closed. That's what I'm saying.
So if you look on the first page, the concept was Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz, conceived by, and then they just kind of plugged in Nicieza and Bagley. And this book, man, I reread this book this morning for this pod. I haven't really read it since the 90s.
And did you regret picking it?
I did. Because so I'm sitting there and I have fond memories of Bagley on this book, and the art here, and I don't know if it's rushed. The coloring was just super rushed. It was dark. It was muddy. I don't know if that was intended, but there are several panels in here that I was just like, ugh. You know, it was it just didn't look right. There was it looked like someone had colored it without there being any inks. It looked like it was colored over rough pencils, and the colors actually bleed out of the lines, so it looked like they were coloring with crayon and colored outside the lines on several panels.
Is this why Nova's outfit's red and not blue?
No, he's actually got the red outfit for a few issues here before he turns back into his traditional garb.
Why?
Because at the end of Nova's series back in the early 80s, he lost his powers.
All right.
And here right at the beginning, if that splash page with Night Thrasher, that's actually Richard Rider he's holding, and he drops him.
Okay. That's all
and all of a sudden his powers come back, and that's all it took was for him to fall off a building to get his powers back. Who knew?
And get his costume wonked out.
Right. Right. I had no explanation about the costume other than Ron Friends probably designed it and said, "Hey, he looks better in red." But this book really is, you know, you don't really know what Night Thrasher's idea is, but he's pulling together all these different heroes for, you know, reasons yet to be known. But all these characters he pulls together, Marvel Boy, which is the Vance Astro from the Guardians of the Galaxy, as a kid, and he had gotten he's a mutant and had gotten his powers back in the pages of the Thing. And so he was kind of running around, but here he tries to join the Avengers and says, "Hey, you're too young, kid. Sorry, come back in a few years."
Hit the street.
Yeah, the revelation here is the reintroduction of Angelica Jones as Firestar, who had a big following from Spidey and His Amazing Friends, and the only other time she had appeared was in one issue of X-Men, and she had a 4-issue limited series, but then nobody saw her for a couple of years until she reappears here.
Oh, she was my amazing friend. Woo.
Yeah. Wasn't Angelica supposed to be Mary Jane in the Amazing Friends?
Yeah, she was strong.
Yeah,
like
she's hotter though.
Yeah. So you have the introduction of Night Thrasher, who you know is a street punk with a skateboard. You know, because skateboarding was hot back in the early '90s. So
I'm amazed they just didn't plug Rocket Racer into this.
He is basically Rocket Racer, with but I don't know. I want to say better, but it's not really better. You have Namorita. Namorita is Submariner's cousin who hadn't been seen in quite a while, so that was cool. And then you have Speedball, who his only really other appearances was created by Steve Ditko. That's his claim to fame. So it was kind of like a ragtag thrown together group. I remember really liking this book when it came out back in the early '90s. I thought it was a good book. This first issue, I mean, obviously, does not stand the test of time when I reread it, mostly for the art, because like I said, I remember Bagley being my favorite artist back in the early '90s, and in here, I don't know if you could scroll through. There's a panel with Night Thrasher and I think Nova, probably towards the middle of the book. Oh, that Terex one. If you go back a page, that Terex one on the top. Look at can you zoom in on his face?
I shall try.
Maybe.
Yeah. Gone too far.
Oh, that's too far.
Oh no, it isn't. I'll get there. Just hang fire. There you go.
Oh, Johnny, that looks like you did it while you were doodling during the show.
Hey!
I don't know.
Thank you very much. Cheers very much. Don't think you give me your lip.
That just does not stand the test of time, does it? And I know Bagley at this point was coming off his run on Amazing Spider-Man, right? Or
was
he
it?
hadn't.
I think
was this prior to Amazing Spider-Man?
I was gonna say this is before Spider-Man. It's got to be.
What was he do? Because he did something. I was not new to Mark Bagley when he was on New Warriors. He did something before that, and I can't really quite remember. Then I thought I remembered him from Spider-Man.
Let me check whilst you're talking.
So anyway, the pencils here look really rough. They don't look like they redid them. There's actually a shot, I think. Oh no, that's from X-Men.
All right, okay, so here we go. He was on an Amazing Spider-Man annual. He worked on a Visionaries comic book based on the 80s toy line. He worked on the New Universe line and some backup stories in Captain America. In '89, Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends created a teenage superhero group called New Warriors. Following year, Marvel launched a new series and assigned Bagley to the book. Bagley stayed on it till issue 25, at which point he left to transition directly onto the Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay, so this is pre-Spider-Man. So I can see this is probably where Bagley cut his teeth then. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's a fair shout.
Okay. And so it's obvious then. It's obvious that this is his first big gig because there's a lot wrong in this issue. No.
There's also some really big Bagley tells in this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. 13th. Were you a New Warriors fan?
I remember getting this right off the newsstand, and the only reason why I bought it was because of Firestar. That was pretty much it. But in going through the book and then obviously rereading it now, I think like you guys said, this is a literal mashup of things. But first off, with the art, Bud is 100% correct. Like you can look at the cross hatching isn't finished, right? For those of you that know how to draw and stuff, you know what cross hatching is. Kind of adds a nice element to with shading and things like that. But I think once the inks were applied, I think they kind of victimized each other. It kind of just subtracted from how this book was intended to look like. So there's that. Some of the background art here is okay, where in others there is no background at all.
Yeah.
So when you're telling a story that's taking place in New York City, for the parts that were in Manhattan, you have to be very careful with that because Manhattan is a very kind of condensed place. There's buildings everywhere, no matter where you look. Whereas in Queens, it may or may not be that way. So some panels threw me off with Night Thrasher in Queens, where you see a whole bunch of buildings, and then in others, there's no background at all. So that kind of threw me off. Terex the Tamer, I was aware of him prior to heading into this book, so that was another surprise for me. Although
doesn't
later on,
doesn't he end up being the Herald of Galactus?
Right.
Who?
So Terex the Tamer, yes.
Oh yeah. This is after he's been the Herald.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
So as I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh, they brought him back. Later in the story, you learn that he was just basically a shell of himself. But yeah, the art kind of detracts. The story is just how do we get these guys together? And to me, at the end of the day, this almost had a Defenders feel to it for guys that couldn't make the Avengers. That's how I pretty much looked at it. Issue 1 was okay enough for me to get the next one, but I dropped this title pretty quick. I didn't really hang around for too long. As much as I love Firestar, it just didn't grab me like that to say,
like
hey, come.
fire.
No, it didn't. It didn't.
Bless your cottons. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I am not a huge Bagley fan. For me, the women all have square jaws. You can't tell which character's which. Body perceptions are all off. There was a panel I was looking at earlier. Where is it? There. The way Firestar's standing there. It's like, come on, look at that. It's just, it's just awful. I just don't. Yeah, fair enough. I get it. It's Bagley's first major art, and I know that he becomes an absolute legend on the Ultimate Spider-Man, and everybody loves that book. But for me, no, it's the characters are drawn too small in the panel to kind of fit them into the whole body of the character into the panel. It just knocks the perception, the perception and the perspective of the characters down for me. I'm not a big fan. It's funny, I was on No Prize recently and I said that Marvel had done something that DC hadn't been able to do, and that was create a black Batman. The reference was to the Avengers and Nighthawk, who I totally forgot about Night Thrasher, who was more direct than Batman it ever was. He's basically putting the characters to the sword just to get them to fire up the powers. Yeah, so I talk about a direct method of joining. This book, I agree with Buddy. This book is of its age. It's a 90s book. Before the industry imploded on itself, I guess.
Just a couple of years before Marvel went through their trying times.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to think this book predates X-Force, which is New Mutants. When's Cable introduced? 89, is it? New Mutants 89?
Yeah, 89. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is where everything goes to hell in a handbasket, pretty sharpish. So Amphibian Niciesa was around he ends up on X-Men, Nomad, this. His fingerprints are all over that era of the Marvel universe.
Right, and Deadpool, right? So
yeah, and co-creator with Deadpool. Although the Deadpool he co-created is nothing like the Deadpool that we have now. It has to be said. Cool. But no, an interesting blast from the past for sure. I've got to say, whilst I'm here, that Nova was one of my brother's favorite characters.
I think Nova's a good character. It's just here. I think this is just a reintroduction to Richard Rider, and actually, I think nowadays that pick your poison, right? It's either Richard Rider or C.M. Alexander. Who's your Nova?
My brother used to read this book purely for the Nova element. That's how much of a fan he was.
I think going forward, if you read the first 24 issues of New Warriors, this book is decent. You know, it's not. It does. You know, and they don't stick to the lineup. They change the lineup a bit. You know.
Can I ask then, just a quick question then? Just New Warriors for the first 25 issues, it gets a little bit better and it's more enjoyable. But is that because at that time, Marvel main books, other than Spider-Man and X-Men, weren't doing great? Avengers read terrible, apart from the some of the Steve Epting issues. Fantastic Four was awful.
Yep.
So where else could you go?
I think people in the early 90s were clamoring for something new, and this had the flavor of something new because it was, you know, but the lineup smacks of, you know, someone writing on Twitter who, what kind of underutilized characters would you like to see on a team, and someone comes up with 5 heroes, and this is the book.
All the Defenders.
I just want to say, I just want to say before my last comment, before I move on to my pick, don't ever diss the champions again after making me read New Warriors. All right, thank you very much.
Hey, who had a longer run?
Who's newer?
Fine. Who's Ol'Timers? Champions. All right. Okay. So it's my turn. Woohoo! My pick. So when you said teenage supergroup, I went Power Pack. Then I caught up and thought with myself and said, no, they're not teenagers. And I thought, why don't I use this one? Because they've got the word teenage, bam, in the title. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 from Mirage Comics. There you go. Couldn't find one of these on eBay. This is on Go Collect. A 9.6 will cost you $62,000.
Say what?
Exactly.
You couldn't find it because it's a Mirage, or
yeah. The only one I could find on eBay was in the 50 grand mark, and that was you had to ship it from the States. So
it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
We all know Peter Laird, Kevin Eastman created the Turtles. Laird's on words, Eastman's on art. I'll have to tell you a quick story about this. My ex-wife, she used to love the cartoon show, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, because our broadcasting laws wouldn't let us use the word ninja in a cartoon.
Why?
Censorship, man. So she loved everything Turtles. She was buying all sorts of crap. I went into a comic book shop, saw a graphic novel of this, bought it for her, opened it up, and this is what I got. And she was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "No, stick with it. It's good. It's a true story. It's a true origin. None of this other cartoon crap. This is exactly how it should have happened." Blah, blah, blah. So, long story short, the Turtles get infected by radio goop a la Daredevil. In fact, Daredevil plays a huge part in the Turtles, where you've got radioactive goop taking away Matt Murdock's eyes. This mutates the Turtles into teenagers, the same way it grows Shredder from the rat to the Shredder that we know and love.
Splinter.
Yeah, Splinter. We got Splinter himself is a metaphor for Stick. Is it Stick from Daredevil?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got the Foot Clan in place of the hand. How much more do you want to steal from one place? I have no idea. But this issue is there to introduce the Turtles. It's a black and white book, so none of the traditional colors for the bandanas. You've just got the weapons of choice to point out who's who. It's kind of explanatory as it goes. Dead simple art, dead effective, cartoony, violent, all good things that we all like in comic books. Bear in mind, this came out in 83, I think it was. There you go. Wow. The turtles looking pretty hard. Talk about the ninja stuff, and then you get the origin of who was the master. You got betrayed. Oh no, who could it be that could be under the mask for the shredder? Oh, who'd have thunk? Yeah, it's pretty bog standard stuff from that point of view. But still, this is the book that launched the Turtles. And when you think Turtles, they are probably one of the most instantly recognizable mass media characters kicking around right now.
Yep.
13th, did you have a chance to read this book?
Yep.
What did you think?
Well, yeah, it brought back a lot of memories because I was a big fan of the animation show too. So reading the comics, which I did after, was definitely different. So in reading this issue, it kind of reminded me that, because I like seeing characters like the way that they were intended to be in like their original form. They weren't really developed yet. Yeah. So the violence in this book obviously is worlds apart from the animation. Where the animation just really went kind of comedic and adventurous as well. Yeah. But in here, this has kind of a dark tone, like you said, with a Daredevil feel to it. Very simple origin. I think, though, for the art, I'm not too wild about the art, although I understand it kind of lends a lot to like how they would look in animation and whatnot. So I get that part. But I think in some panels, it just reminded me of early Matt Wagner art.
Oh, that's sure. Yeah.
So, but other than that, the story works. You get a beginning, you get an origin, you get an adventure, and you get a conclusion. So it's pretty well self-contained. So I could see how this concept took off, despite all the subliminal Daredevil references. But this became a franchise. I mean, the cartoon, the toys,
the movies,
more books, the movies, right?
The TV shows,
more
comics. I mean, one of the biggest hits of the last year has been The Last Ronin, which is a Turtles book. And if you haven't read it, you don't need to be a Turtle fan to read it, but it is gorgeous. It is well worth a read.
And I know IDW owns the licensing for the or has a licensing for the Turtles right now, but I just feel like there's so much more left for the Turtles. There's much more potential in there. They obviously this is just the very basic of the Turtles world, but from here all these other characters that came out, they have their own universe, and there's a very strong following for this.
So in this book, there's no Casey Jones, there's no April O'Neil, the Mouses haven't been put into place yet. All that's yet to come. Cool.
I just find it very interesting how if you just slap this book on the table, how do you sell this to people like this is going to be the next great thing? So for how that happened, it really is in a way kind of miraculous, but it's great to see this in its original form.
You could say it because Eastman and Laird created Mirage Comics to start with. You could say this is the very first crowdfunded comic potentially. Without this, is there a Kickstarter? Well, I'm sure other people self-published as well at some point. But I think this is the one that broke through and became the mass media success. Professor, what's your thoughts?
So when I grew up a big Marvel DC fan. Like I was just reading the superheroes at this point when Turtles came out, and my first exposure to the Turtles was when I was a kid. I was working at Burger King, and we got the movie tie-in stuff. The toys, we got toys.
You got turtle power.
So we got turtle toys, and I was like, oh, this is cool, because it was the first time that I'd ever seen crossover superhero type comic book toys, and all of a sudden I became the authority, right? And I had to read up on the Turtles because everybody knew I was a comic book fan. but I wasn't a fan of the turtles. So so I, we got the toys, and this was back in 1989, and so we got the toys, and I went to see that movie when it came out, and that was when I was like, okay, they're doing something with this. And 89 was when the turtles came out. That was the same year that we got Batman, remember?
Yeah.
So,
totally.
so it was like you had the two different spectrums, because you had Batman, but then you had this indie property, the Turtles, and who knew that? That was brand new for a lot of us, right? So I was like, I was over the moon. I loved that stuff, and I was just like, I wanted more. I wanted more Turtles. I never actually went out to pick up the books. I would be kicking myself if I could have found a first issue of Turtles back in '89. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Yeah, the arcade game too was flying around too, and that was another thing that I used to play a lot. Like I couldn't get enough.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy how we think about when we talk about superhero movies.
Yeah,
we think about the Marvel stuff. We argue like the DC stuff as well. But we've got to remember, you're absolutely right, bud. The Turtles were out in the 80s.
Yep.
They predate all of Marvel's movies. So
yeah. It was amazing. It was an amazing example of merchandising and promotion and just word of mouth for the Turtles that made them into the franchise really that it is today. And I still think that that the Turtles is one of the most ripped off properties ever. I mean.
Really?
I think so. Just the name Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you get like adolescent radioactive hamsters, whatever like that, and
Biker mice from Mars.
Stuff like that. There was a ton of those things back in the early '90s, trying to just ride on the coattails of the Turtles.
Yeah, good shout. I do know that it helped ban nunchucks. So. In the UK.
Did you guys like the black and white versions better, where the only reason you could tell the turtles apart was because of the weapons, definitely. Instead of color coding the turtles? Did you like it when they color coded them?
I like it. I like this style. I like black and white. I want to see it in its original format. I don't care for the Dayglow turtles.
Well, even when they're in color, they're just all wearing red, right? So
I just think, that panel I've got shredded there, that looks great. I think you throw colour on that, you'll spoil it.
Right.
I don't need to know he's got a purple sash or anything like that. Before we go, then we've got to talk about it. It's the turtle in the room. Who's your favourite turtle? 13th.
I'm gonna say. Wait, who the hell is it? Who's the blue one again? Raphael. No, that's Donatello. Yeah, Donatello.
Leonardo is the blue one.
Sorry.
Yeah, Leonardo. That's my favorite one.
The leader of the group, transformed from the norm by the nuclear goop. All right, okay, Leonardo. Professor?
I liked Michelangelo because he was always like the surfer dude with the cowabunga and the pizza and he was I think he was the one with the most personality.
Yeah, cool. Well, I suppose I have to go for Raphael. Because he's the badass that's just not going to listen. He's just going to do his own thing.
Isn't he like the unofficial leader of the Turtles too, Raphael?
No, Leonardo's the leader.
Leonardo's the leader? Okay.
Yeah. Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines. Yeah. Michelangelo's cool, that's true.
Is that the song? Is that the song for them? Oh, Jesus.
And Donatello is dead now, I think, in Turtles lore.
Oh, well, I'm not going to spoil it. You need to go and read the Ronin. So there you go. Go and read that. That'll tell you who's kicking around and who isn't.
Yeah.
You might be surprised at who the last Ronin is, but I am.
Hawkeye?
No,
sorry. I knew that would get machine.
And on that note, we are done for another episode. Professor, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
13th, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Excellent. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, all about Marvel Comics, Marvel MCU movies, and Disney Plus, where Moon Knight is currently airing on Disney Plus.
Can't wait for Obi-Wan. And of course, don't forget to check out Outside the Panels. There's a host of interviews on there. Go back a few months. Fabian Nicieza is on there. And yes, he talks about new Deadpool and Nomad. I had to talk about Nomad, right?
Yeah, and I guess for the audience, don't forget to check out older episodes of us.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. Don't judge just too harshly when we were doing it on Skype, though, right?
Do we call those episodes the Ol'Timers?
We'll just leave it there. All right, guys. Thanks very much. I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes, and as always, adios.